Rough showing for his Bengals today. Rough showing for him today. They lose to the Pats, who a lot of us have anticipated would be one of the worst teams in football, and don't just lose. It never really feels like they're in the game. I mean, just anemic end to end. How worried are you about Cincinnati, Logan?
I mean, I won. I don't know if I said it on last show, but I said it on the Theo show. I did take the
Yeah.
Patriots to win this game in my
Mm-hmm.
predictions.
Good on you.
I just had a weird feeling, and I mean, I'm not worried because I didn't expect the Bengals to be that good this year, but Burrow looked really limited in this one. I thought New England did a phenomenal job of taking away passes over the top, but they looked really limited. And that's what I said in the preseason with this team is they're so reliant on their top two players, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's like if you can X out Jamar, if you can make him, into an average receiver, which he had 6 catches for 62 yards, if you can take him out of the game, there's not really much else that they can do. Joe is not a particularly mobile quarterback that can punish you on the ground. They couldn't get the running game going in this one. T. Higgins is out. The offense just looked really, really limited down Higgins. And the Bengals
Mm-hmm.
lose 2 fumbles. That's not on Burrow. Tanner Hudson has a fumble. Charlie Jones has a fumble. But they're bad on third down. They go 4 of 11 there. They only produced 224 yards of total offense. And the defense got shredded on the ground. The big problem with the Bengals last year is they couldn't stop anybody through the air. Is this going to be the problem that haunts them this year? Like Jacoby throws for 121 yards in this game.
Yeah.
You never want that's Kenny Pickett numbers. You don't want to lose to a guy like that. I mean, come
You don't
on.
want to be in Kenny Pickett conversations.
And Ramondre Stevenson carves him up for 120 yards and a rushing TD. It's just like,
Jacoby
again,
was moving, though. Jacoby made some plays with his legs. Didn't
true.
know he had it in him.
I'm mad at myself because me and Angelo cooked up a QB rushing yards parlay. We thought about putting Jacoby in there, but then we waved it off. But the Bengals look really one-dimensional offensively. And that one dimension is Joe to Jamar. It seems like Joe Mixon might have actually been really helpful in this attack. I don't think the offensive line is that good.
No.
Again, you can win a lot of games with Burrow and Chase and them going off and them doing their thing. But other the Patriots did a really good job Xing those guys out, of taking away big shot plays over the top, which this Bengals team is dependent on. And I think this defense is going to be solid, man. I am worried about the Bengals, and I wonder if I overshot the win totals for them and the Browns this year, man.
Well, neither of us have been high on the Bengals. You had them last in the division. I had them winning 9 games, but a big part of that was just the cupcake schedule that they have outside the division. They play the Titans, they play the Giants, they play the Panthers. There's a couple other gimmies in there, or at least what should be gimmies on paper. One of them, though, I thought was the Pats. And listen, the Pats, because of their defense, it seems that Mayo is maintaining a Belichickian culture. Like, I mean, they still brought it with the game plan. They played their asses off defensively. That makes them like an uncomfortable team to play, but also they're absolutely going to be a bottom 3 offense in football. So, like, I'm not really moved on the Pats here. I think that, yeah, they can give you some trouble with their defense, but they put up 16 points in this game still. And against most teams, that's just not going to
I
cut
mean,
it.
when you have an all-pro first-team wideout and an all-pro first-team quarterback, apparently,
Yeah,
you got to score more than 16. It's completely on the offense.
absolutely. And there's a few reasons that I have not been high on the Bengals. One of them being that they just weren't very good last year, that defense took a huge step back, and they bring in Geno Stone this offseason. Their safeties were just really rough last year. There was a big drop off there. So, okay, that's one improvement. But overall, I didn't see enough in this group to think they're going to suddenly leap to being an above average defense. And then I look at the offense, and it's Joe Burrow and it's Jamar. And that's it. They don't run the ball well. They haven't run the ball well for years. Their line is mediocre. Their line's been mediocre. But crucially, they're losing receiver depth. Like, you can dismiss the Tyler Boyd loss. He's been a very consistent number 3. And when T. Higgins does go down, like he's out for this game, then you feel that lack of depth. And I just think in a situation like this, Joe Burrow is not an elevator in the way that a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, or a Lamar Jackson is, where those guys, it doesn't matter nearly as much who is blocking for them, who is catching passes. They have such an incredible ability to create, to overcome the situation. Like I was saying, if you can run around for 4 or 5 seconds, buy yourself time, and then make a ridiculous throw across your body, it doesn't really matter who's blocking. It doesn't really matter who's passing catches. That is going to produce good offense. Joe Burrow just can't do that. So, yes, when you put him in a better situation, with one of the most talented receiving cores like he's had for a good portion of his career, he can execute. He will produce as an elite quarterback, but he still hasn't produced the regular season offenses that Josh and Pat and Lamar have. I do think that he got overrated off the Super Bowl run when that defense balled out and Evan McPherson went insane. And I do believe that the Bengals have been overrated as a whole since then. And people have ignored a lot of the issues on this team. They've ignored the defensive regression. They've ignored the fact that with Burrow, this team was 5-5 last year. And I see people saying stuff like, oh, Bengals start slow. Just wait until the winter. I'm just not sure I buy that. Like 2022, they started slow. Then they were awesome. Last year, they were just 5-5 when Burrow played. They only averaged 20 points per game. He averaged 6.3 yards per attempt, which is awful. And he was banged up early, and that was especially brutal. And then they got a little better, but like they were never playing like an elite football team, in my opinion. So I'm not just giving them the benefit of the doubt when I see a bunch of problems with this team. They let the Pats run for 170 yards on them. And this is a team that has no passing attack whatsoever. I just do not think that they belong in conversations with, forget the elite playoff teams in the AFC. I don't think they're a playoff team.
I agree with you. And I mean, you mentioned the Tyler Boyd loss. I think the bigger loss is the guy that's been with Joe Burrow this entire time, Brian Callahan, new coach of the Titans. I mean, a lot of people wanted to point to the fact last year that this team ended up winning games with Jake Browning. Why? You have a lot of receiving depth, and I'm not putting Jake Browning or Joe Burrow on like the same level or anything close to that. But Browning filled in, was on time, was efficient, was accurate, got the ball to Jamar Chase when they needed to, got the ball to Tyler Boyd, spread the ball around. And now you're down Brian Callahan, who was a huge part of, this offensive success. So I just see regression across the board, man. And I got a feeling since he is going to bounce back, they'll probably win. They'll win soon, and you'll have your detractors, Carson, that'll always say, the Bengals start slow, they're going to kick into gear. I don't think this is the year, man. I think we're looking at a potential bottoming out of this team.
Who do you think Burrow is closer to? Is he closer to Josh Allen or is he closer to Dak Prescott?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I try.
You said closer to Lamar or closer to Dak?
I said Josh. You could say Lamar if you want. But I think Josh is probably a tougher question because I think that gap is pretty freaking big.
Probably Dak. I mean, when you just look at the skill sets,
pretty similar skill sets.
Very, very similar. I like Burrow more at the line of scrimmage. I trust Burrow a little bit more as a decision maker. I like Burrow's arm a little bit more, but I think it probably is closer. And if you're looking at guys that are in this tier, after tonight, I think you can have a real conversation about should Stafford be over Burrow right now. It's not just this game, right? And I don't want to act like it's last season too. We have to take it all into account. And yeah, I think he probably is closer to Dak.
I agree. I think that he is pretty clearly closer to Dak. And I think Dak is really good. I'm high on Dak. I think he gets too disrespected. But what are they? They're excellent pocket passers. They are high IQ operators within the pocket, and they can move a little bit, and they can extend plays just a little bit. But for the most part, it's going to be processing the game and accuracy from within the pocket. Neither of them are great arm talents. They're both pretty average arm talents. And there are just dudes who can do more to elevate offenses single-handedly. So at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is not the reason that I'm this low on the Bengals. I think he is absolutely one of the bright spots, one of the greatest strengths, one of the best players on this team. But what I will say is I have a different level of confidence in a Josh or a Lamar to cover up all the blemishes around them and still win 11 games because there's a difference in their transformative impact, dual threats, extending plays, everything that we've talked about. For the Pats, like I said, this doesn't really move me. This is a pretty quintessential 2020s Patriots win, excel defensively, run the ball, win the turnover battle, make timely plays defensively. You can win a few games that way. Their offense is still going to make it hard. But what I will say is encouraging is that they have maintained that with Mayo, because that wasn't a guarantee. You lost the best defensive mind in football history and one of the best culture setters. And even if he fell off as a GM, and even if he wasn't able to put forth a decent offense in the last several years, like, that always made the Pats a pretty competitive football team. And I think they'll be able to maintain that. They just have a really tough schedule, as part of the reason I think they're going to win so few games this year.